up here goes back to the early days. I think one of the rarest items is a gasoline pan torch over here on the front of the cab. Now you can see it hanging there. The thing that makes it rare is that most of them have exploded before now. That's an 1890s torch, and it's been patched once. The thing that made them dangerous was the fact that once they leaked, the gasoline would run down the outside of the tube into the burner, and the flame would back up into the container and explode, and there'd be about a half a gallon of burning gasoline blow out over the crowd in the tent, and it would destroy the tent show, of course, immediately. So that's one of the items I picked up from the Living History Farms General Store Museum. The curator, he had an 1876 store, and since this is turn of the century and 1890 was too modern for him, why, that's how I acquired that pan torch. The signs up here are all relevant to a real medicine show. Painless tooth extraction, that was the least popular of all medicine shows. The dentistry shows, there was a variety of them. I've heard of dentists who actually advertised and set up in hotel lobbies, and they would send out flyers and advertise in the newspapers 2 weeks in advance. Every town did not have a dentist. And if a medicine show could advertise dentistry, it was sure to generate some kind of income. And so if they could find a dentist, they would advertise dentistry. And it was, of course, many times less than painless. And some of these patients had stories you wouldn't believe about these things. Big free show, it was always a big free show, even if it was only one guy. In a world without television or radio, everybody came to a big free show. And generally it would be set up on the open lot outside town. And if the show was big enough and played music, the performers knew they had to play music loud enough for the town to hear an hour before showtime. And so that was the opening of the tent show or the medicine show, was the hour prelude of music before the performance. Max, the ventriloquist figure, yeah, I can't leave him out. He is over 75 years old, and I found him in the scrap heap of Martin's Magic Shop in the 1970s. He's been on the show about 35 years, and we've had a great time. He's a mainstay item, and he is a Chautauqua tent show figure. Started in the late 1920s, early 30s, and his owner was Red Correll, a brother of Charles Correll, a radio pioneer. And Red and his brother Tom were both good friends of mine, and Charlie I never saw. I saw him once, I never met him. Many years ago, I was a little boy in Peoria, Illinois, and Charlie appeared on a flatbed truck signing autographs, and he come home from California, and Peoria being his hometown. So that's the story behind my ventriloquist figure that I use, and try to keep the material as time period as possible. One of the rarest artifacts that I have are handwritten ledger pages from 1820 to 1903. A pioneer doctor, a lady from Monticello, Illinois, wrote down the herbs she used for her cures of asthma, rheumatism, pneumonia, even cancer. And I have no idea if they worked or not, but it's pretty scary, and I always tell the audiences, once you read that board, you're going to have a new appreciation for penicillin, I'll guarantee you. This is really a rare piece, and my wife said, why do you take it on the road? And I said, it's for those people who really understand it. And somewhere in this collage of handwritten recipes, this old lady wrote down her pickle and apple curing methods. How she made cucumbers and apples pickles. So if you see this show, you can sort through there, and if you can read her handwriting, there will be something from the 1800s as a souvenir. The bottles are a variety, different ones. Kilmer's Swamp Root Cure, which was a very big item. Harder's Liniment, Father John's Tonic, Caldwell, Dr. Caldwell's Medicine Company from Monticello, Illinois. These were all parts of the early patent medicine days. Dr. Miles Medical Company, the Miles Laboratories. These were all parts of the early patent medicine days. And like I said, whether they worked or not, we don't know. But we do know they sold millions of bottles of this stuff in the last 150 years. This is the inside of the wagon. For those folks who have never seen it, the inside of the wagon is probably a personal thing more than anything else. These are all pieces of memorabilia from the original shows. There's the Hadacol handbills from the Hadacol show. The Wizard Oil songbook from the Hamlin's Wizard Oil show. We have a floating palace handbill of a barge, a party barge that floated on the Mississippi, and I decided to put that up there. And then pictures of some of these medicine shows. Here is the Doc Skeens medicine show from the 1890s, and thanks to his grandson Jeff Arrington of the Arrington Dental Labs in Newport News, Virginia, I have these pictures, and also his newspaper ad that he had. If you buy 25 cents worth of medicine from me, I will pull your tooth free of charge. Dr. R.D. Skeens Medicine Company. And they also made a herb tonic, several different kinds. And so he was a very busy medicine man. A later performer that I met, Bobby Snyder. Bobby Snyder was a great performer, and I met Bobby at the Florida State Fair in the early 1980s, and Bobby was 80-some years old, I would make a guess. And that picture was made about 1932, and he gave it to me. Bobby had some very colorful stories about himself, and I really enjoyed meeting him. My teacher, Max Terhune. Legend goes that Max started on medicine shows in 1899 at the age of 9. This picture was from a 1936 movie he made with Gene Autry, one of his very first films that he made with Elmer, the ventriloquist figure, and Max signed that to me as prize pupil and one of his choices of people, and I treasure that picture. I often wondered why he picked that picture, and it was because I think it was the very first film he ever used Elmer in. And thanks to Gene Autry, who got him in the movies, Max had a career, a lifetime career in Hollywood, and he was a very well-liked performer and a real dynamic one-man show. People said he was the greatest one-man show that ever lived for natural talent. Pictures of Bill Cody, my friend Buffalo Bill's grandson. We had a television series in 1992. Here we were up in Yellowstone Park. And I remember sitting on that bench with Bill and we were doing the dialogue. And I said, I wish I had a still picture of this. The cameraman took his 35 millimeter out and set it on top of the tape camera and shot that still, and we've been using it ever since. In fact, when State Farm sponsored our TV series, that was the picture they used for the handbill. So it's kind of a souvenir of a lifetime. Jay Marshall, my pal, passed away a year ago. Jay Marshall was one of the greatest vaudeville entertainers, and claim to fame, he was on Ed Sullivan 18 times, along with many other performances. And I owe Jay a lot of thanks. He did a lot of tutoring in this business for many of us performers. Paul Lacrosse, the exhibition shooter. We toured together and did shows together, combination attraction for about 10 years. And he was one great entertainer. He was a great shooter. He was a very unique, talented guy. He could hit an aspirin in the air with a .45 Colt. And he did some really fantastic trick shots. Went all over the world. Russia, New Zealand, Japan. I met Paul in the early 1980s, and this is a picture, I believe, 1982 in Broward County, Florida, when we had a show together. So there's a little story behind some of the different acts that I've worked with. This was Paul Lacrosse, the great exhibition shooter. The side of the wagon is kept as close to an original as possible. The real truth behind it is that most of these medicine shows or traveling shows would stay in camps. They would pitch tents, and they would have a cookhouse, and everyone had their individual tents if they were camping. Sometimes they would stay in town in the boarding houses, and very few would ever sleep inside the wagon unless it was a one-man show or perhaps a man and his wife, and then it would be possible. I've seen traveling wagons where two people slept, and I've seen medicine show wagons that were smaller than this, leather vans, and they would be pulled by a single horse. These are in the Appalachians. And in the Appalachians, they would go up and down the Blue Ridge. And they would go up and down the Blue Ridge to the small communities and crossroads where the farms were and perform.